The soup kitchen on Dock 7 smelled like boiled protein paste and rust. Marcus Webb didn't mind. He'd smelled worse. He'd been worse. 3 years ago he was sleeping under the mag-rail overpass with nothing but a mylar sheet and a busted heating coil. Now he had a room, a job bussing tables at the kitchen, and enough credits to eat twice a day most weeks. He counted himself lucky. He was mopping near the loading bay door when he heard the sound, small, wet, trying very hard to be quiet. Marcus set the mop against the wall and opened the door. There were 2 of them crouched in the shadow of the recycling drum. Small, 4-limbed but wrong, the proportions off in the way that said asterisk, not human asterisk. Their skin was pale gray-blue and slightly translucent, like wax paper held up to light. Their eyes were enormous, dark, and fixed on him with the particular terror of creatures that had learned not to trust anything large that moved toward them. He'd seen that look before, in a mirror once. "Hey," he said, keeping his voice low, "you okay?" Neither of them answered. The smaller one pressed closer to the larger one, who wrapped 2 thin arms around it and didn't look away from Marcus. He held up both hands, palms out. "Not gonna hurt you, promise." Still nothing. Their mouths were horizontal slits. He couldn't tell if they were breathing hard or just scared. Maybe both. He went back inside. Coordinator Pel Vash was doing inventory when Marcus found her. She was thinny, tall, 4-armed, methodical, and she ran Dock 7's aid station with the precision of someone who had seen every flavor of crisis and budgeted for none of them. 2 alien kids in the back alley, Marcus said. Young, real young, hungry, I think. Pel didn't look up from her tablet. Species. Don't know, gray-blue skin, big eyes, little. She made a note, unregistered. They didn't answer me at all, scared. Pel set the tablet down and finally looked at him. Her expression wasn't cold, just worn. "Marcus, you know the policy. Unregistered non-citizen minors have to go through Port Authority before we can serve them. If we feed them without documentation, we lose the station's operating license. We've been through this." "I know. Port Authority will take 2 to 4 days to process a welfare referral, if they're flagged as stowaways." "I know. There's nothing I can do." He looked at her for a long moment. She looked back, and he could see she meant it, not cruelty, just the mathematics of survival. The kitchen served 400 people a day. Losing the license meant none of them ate. "Okay," he said. He went back to mopping. His lunch break was at the 13th hour. He got his usual, a bowl of grain mash and half a protein brick, the standard volunteer meal. He sat at the end of the long table near the back door the way he always did. Then he got up, took his tray, and went outside. The kids were still there. The larger one had moved slightly, putting itself between the door and the smaller one, protecting. Even exhausted, even terrified, still protecting. Marcus sat cross-legged on the ground about 2 meters away. He put the tray between them. He didn't say anything. He picked up his spoon, took a bite of the mash, and set the spoon down next to the tray. Then he looked at the wall across from him and waited. For a long time, nothing happened. Then he heard a shuffle, the scrape of small feet on grated metal. He didn't look. He kept his eyes on the wall and breathed slowly, the way he used to breathe under the mag rail when the security drone swept through and you had to be very still and very quiet. Something touched the edge of the tray. He didn't move. There was a pause, then the soft sound of eating. Careful at first, then less careful. Then the unmistakable sound of the smaller one making a noise that might have been a word in a language he didn't know, and the larger one responding quietly, and then both of them eating. Marcus looked at the wall and felt something loosen in his chest. When the tray was empty, he heard them stop. He looked then. The larger one was watching him with those enormous dark eyes. Up close he could see the fine structure of their face, the faint ridges along the jaw, The way the skin caught the dock light with a faint iridescent shimmer. Beautiful, actually. He hadn't noticed that before when he was thinking about the scared part. He pointed to himself. Marcus. The large one blinked. Then, carefully, it pointed to itself. The sound it made was something between a click and a vowel, not anything he could reproduce. He tried anyway. It blinked again. Then slowly, the horizontal slit of its mouth curved at the corners. He didn't know if that meant what a human smile meant. He decided it probably did. He was back on shift 20 minutes later, mop in hand, when Pell found him. "You gave them your lunch," she said. "My lunch to give." She was quiet for a moment. "You didn't eat." "I'll be okay." Another pause. She crossed her upper arms, a threnny gesture he'd learned meant she was thinking through something she didn't want to think through. "The Port Authority referral. If I file it as a humanitarian priority, they move faster. Maybe same-day processing." Marcus kept mopping. "That right. It cost me a favor. I have 3 left this quarter." "You could say thank you." "Thank you, Pell." She made a sound that might have been a sigh or a click, hard to tell with Threnny. "Get them to the intake desk before second shift. I'll have someone there who won't ask too many questions." She walked away. He watched her go, then looked at the back door. The larger one's name, the closest Marcus could get to it, was something he started rendering in his head as *Sev*. The smaller one was Kel*. He learned this over the next 2 hours while he sat with them in the intake waiting area, which was beige and fluorescent and smelled like disinfectant, and which he had also sat in once, 3 years ago, on the other side of Desperate. They were siblings. He gathered this not from words, they had none in common, but from the way Save kept Kel close, kept checking, kept touching the smaller one's shoulder as if reassurance was a thing you could transmit through fingertips. Maybe it was. He'd had no one to do that for him, but he understood the impulse. Their ship had been a refugee transport. It had docked for resupply, been flagged for a compliance inspection, and been impounded. Crew and registered passengers were processed. The kids, unregistered, traveling in a maintenance crawl space, were not. They had been on the docks for 6 days. 6 days. He thought about 6 days without food, without shelter, without anyone stopping to look. He'd lasted 4 days once before someone had stopped to look. A human woman named Doris who ran a street cart and who had given him a cup of broth and a list of shelters written on a paper bag. He'd kept that bag for 2 years. He didn't know where it was now, but he remembered her face. He wondered if Save and Kel would remember his. Probably not. They were kids. They'd grow up and have other things to fill the space. That was okay. That was good, actually. That meant they got to grow up. The intake worker who saw them was a young Threnny man who asked very few questions, as promised. He processed Save first, then Kel, and told them in the standard 3-language automated voiceover that they would be placed with the port's temporary housing program while their status was reviewed. Save listened to all of this with those enormous eyes fixed on the intake worker. Then they turned to Marcus. They said something. He didn't understand it. They said it again, slower, and he still didn't understand it, and then Save reached out and put 2 thin fingers against the back of his hand, the lightest possible touch, and held them there for a moment. He understood that. "You're welcome," he said. He walked back to the kitchen in time for the dinner prep shift. His stomach was empty and his feet hurt, and he had given away the only meal he was going to get today and spent his break in a beige waiting room. He picked up the mop. He thought about Doris and her paper bag. He thought about the way a scared kid's mouth could curve at the corners, even when it was terrified. He thought someone always has to go first. He started mopping. Outside, Dock 7 hummed and clanged and breathed, the way ports do, full of people going somewhere, full of people stuck, full of the whole complicated mess of everyone trying to make it through. Marcus Webb mopped the floor, and didn't think of himself as any kind of hero. He just thought I had a lunch. They needed a lunch. That's all. That's all it ever is.